And go ahead and start recording. And I'm really glad to see such a good turnout. Kylie, I don't mean to put you on the spot. Kylie or Celeste, would you all be able to help me monitor the chat because we've got such a big group? I've just moved away from you. Kylie, could you give me, sorry, was that a thumbs up? I can't hear you, or give me a thumbs up. I wasn't seeing you before.
Okay.
Yeah, Jolene,
Yes,
I can.
I can help you.
Okay, so either both. I'll say Celeste because, so I'll introduce some of our DevCon members. So Kylie Crook is leading the peer-to-peer renaissance, we'll say, and Kylie is the Southeast region representative. Celeste Feta is the Southeast region rep-elect, and I'll say a little bit more about that, that the Museum Ed Division of National Art Education Association is all voluntary leadership, and there are 4 different regions, geographic regions for NAEA, and so each division has a rep for each of those regions. They're a little wonky geographically, so like there's the Eastern, Southeastern, Western, and Pacific. Western is pretty much the Midwest, and Pacific. Anyway, so you can look at the NAEA website to find out where you are. And we are hoping to, maybe in August, do some regional meetings so that you can get to know folks who are in your same general geographic area. I also mentioned those positions. They're 4-year positions, 2 years as representative-elect, 2 years as representative. And it's a really great way to learn more about NAEA, which is a cool organization, get to meet people, and learn a lot more about how a large professional organization runs, but also connecting with teachers, K-12, higher ed, etc. For those who don't know, the Museum Ed Division is small but mighty part of NAEA. NAEA has, depending on the time, between 14 and 17,000 members. Museum Ed is between 400 and 700. So we're a small bit, but we have historically been really active and engaged, and I'm really proud of that. So at the end of the convention in March, we are planning on an in-person convention in Chicago in early March. At the end of that is leadership turnover. And so we'll be seeking new regional representative elects. And then I don't know if either Celeste or Kylie, you want to mention what you do in those roles and give it a good plug.
Celeste, do you want to go ahead or should I?
You go first, Kylie.
Okay.
That's unkind of me.
Yeah, basically we help to put on the pre-conference. We help to motivate our community to become members of NAEA and hear them out and try to understand what they want from the organization and how we move forward and keep relevant, which is part of this peer-to-peer. So you could be helping with that, things like that, or you could be helping with our social media. And then we also review the proposals that get sent for the NAEA convention, and just various other things. And it's a really great opportunity. You learn so much, you meet tons and tons of people, and it allows you to set aside the time. It forces you to set aside the time to learn about about this world, about this community. So, thoroughly recommend.
Thanks, Kylie.
And I would just say, in addition to all those things, it's networking among the organization, but also among the board. There's a real sense of community with the board and each other. So especially during this time, it's been a real supportive outlet to kind of share experiences and learn from each other as we move through this time. So it's been really helpful from a personal, professional aspect as well. So definitely consider joining.
Thanks, Celeste. And there's a couple of other development committee members. Mika Fay and Stephanie Stern are on the call too. And if development committee members feel comfortable, if you would just pop your names into the chat, and that way folks can connect with you if they're interested in learning more. There are also less time intensive and ways. So if you're interested in helping out with social media, you can do that as well. Allie is also part of social media, but she's not on the development committee. And of course, helping out with like peer-to-peer, helping facilitate these, etc., is a great way to do that. So we have got a really good turnout today. We've got 100 people on. And I'm going to start us out with a poll, get us going, to find out who you've talked to. If you've had a chance to talk to K-12 teachers to help plan for those, and I'm assuming virtual fall school tours, go ahead and fill in that poll. And as folks are doing that, I know a lot of people joined after I made this, sent this message of, this is intended to be a conversation, definitely not a lecture. So if folks are comfortable to put on your video, then please do. We'd love to see your faces. But I understand that we need to take care of ourselves and this over Zoomed world that we live in now. So if it is better for you to keep that camera off, I totally understand. And I think since we've got so many people today, I'm definitely going to try and use our breakout room feature later on. So. All right, almost everybody has participated. I'm going to end polling, so enter your feedback if you haven't yet. All right, so it looks like most folks have chatted with teacher friends. Some have done some email surveys. That result is about 30%. The chatting with teacher friends was 58%. And I apologize for those who are joining us by phone. The question was, how have you gotten input from K-12 teachers to help plan for virtual fall school tours? Check all that apply. And the options are email survey, virtual focus group, advisory council, chatting with teacher friends, and I haven't connected with teachers yet. So chatting with teacher friends, 58%, email survey, 30%, virtual focus group, 12%, advisory council, 9%, and haven't connected yet, 31%. So yeah, a wide range. I wanted to start with that to see if there were folks, and so I think it's not going to be easy, but it'll be, it'll be what we can do, is if you're interested in participating, if you could drop a note in the chat to just say share. How about you just say share if you want to add to the conversation, and then Celeste will keep track of who that is so we can kind of keep a track of who in what order. This is the most people we've had at once, so be kind with us as we work through it. So I'm going to stop sharing those results, but I would love it if you have connected with teachers. Obviously, every region, every city, every locale is going to be a little bit different, but if you have connected with teachers, I'd love to hear some of the takeaways that you've gotten from them. So if you've got some data to share, that would be great. Just in the chat, type share, and then Celeste can help us keep a list of who's willing to share their ideas.
Let's see, Adrian from
Or Adriana?
Adriana?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm coming from Houston, working with the Contemporary Arts Museum Houston, and just speaking with teacher friends, I've heard a lot of teachers trying to decolonize their curriculum, and so I see the place where CAM kind of fits in with having radical and powerful shows. Specifically, we've had a show called Walls Turn Sideways, artists confronting the criminal justice system. So trying to find kind of tools for teachers to utilize, and then in turn, right, having a field trip to the museum, review, going through that archive of shows is like one example of where I've kind of found to fit that need of teachers trying to decolonize their classroom, whether that's English language or art classrooms.
Sorry. So it sounds like that's a really good option for contemporary art especially, but obviously we know that other museums can help contribute to a decolonizing curriculum as well. And I think Kylie, you also were willing to share.
Yeah, mine was more about, I guess, logistics. We talked to, I'm in Miami-Dade County in Southern Florida, which is the worst place in the world right now, I guess. And they're saying through they have a STEAM designation office, which is what we work with heavily. And they're saying all of their visits, site visits and things to see what the schools are doing STEAM-wise are virtual. And as partners of the schools that we work with, we are almost 99% not going to be welcome into the classrooms, whether they go on site or it's virtual. We won't be going to the buildings. So we're definitely, it's kind of a relief, just that it's not up in the air anymore, at least for the fall, that everything's, so we're just planning everything to be virtual. But I did want to share the hesitation of our volunteers and docents and even our paid tour guides. And we have lost about 50% almost of the people who are interested in doing tours.
Wow, that's a big dip. Yeah.
Susie?
Great. Susie Bloom, if you would go ahead.
Hello, I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I agree with Kylie. We're having similar situations here with schools where even visits to the classroom look like they'll be prohibited. A lot of our districts are doing a combination, like a hybrid schedule of in-person and virtual, but this state is pretty strict. So I wouldn't be surprised if we go all virtual, at least for the fall. So far my strategy has been talking to teacher colleagues, but I'm lucky to know a few that are computer science teachers. So I'm not the most tech savvy, but they've been able to advise me on some of the software platforms and like Zoom versus Google Meet. Some of the other, there's one called Start Soul that helps you do online lesson planning. So it's just been helpful for me to get that technology background.
Great. So yeah, thinking about the platforms, we did have a part one of this, and I promised to, we did have a part one of this, which we did record, and the recording is on one of our NAEA Museum Ed YouTube channels. We happen to have two. We're working on that, figuring it out, but it is there. I'll pop the link into the chat later on. But definitely thinking about the format. At that previous one, we talked about benefits of Zoom versus other things. Personally, I found Zoom to be more user-friendly, more stable, better picture than Google Hangouts or the Google platform. However, we know there are security issues with Zoom. And of course, museum educators, we have to use the platforms that are going to be compatible and usable by the schools that we're working with. I see that Sarah Uzurumba, if you would unmute and share, and please let me know if the correct way to pronounce your last name.
Sure, Ozurumba.
Thank you.
So I've been talking with several teacher friends about length and logistics of virtual tours. So we know that we will be going pretty much all virtual, and the biggest district in the state of Wisconsin, which is where I'm at, just recently released their proposal, which will be a virtual start as well. So from my teacher friends, I've been hearing teachers will eventually be looking for virtual tours to incorporate into their curriculum. I was kind of asking if they're more interested in having something that's pre-recorded or something that is live, and it seems to be pretty 50-50 on that, or teachers are not sure that they can answer that question because they don't really know what the climate of their classrooms or virtual classrooms are going to look like yet. Teachers did seem to be interested in things that were slightly shorter, because our regular tours are roughly an hour, which after you get kids into the museum, probably it's closer to 45 minutes after logistics have been handled. But teachers seem to be interested in something that's more 30 to 45 minute range, so that it'll fit into their schedule a little bit better.
Yeah, and that's something that came up last time too. Sorry, the dog's gonna freak out. I just can't stop him. Is the not knowing, having both pre-recorded and live options seems really important. Also, of course, the traditional museum educator flexibility, being able to change when school potentially changes. And that shorter time frame is something that we have heard to previous sessions and from other sources. So like 30 minutes of kind of the attention span, and I think we can recognize that from our own personal Zoom attention spans. 30 minutes is a good place to aim, and so 45 minutes to kind of buffer, take care of, takes time for people to get on the system, etc. And I see that Kelly Williams has something to share and a question. So Kelly, if you want to go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. Apologies for those of you who have heard me share this and
Kelly, your mic seems to be a little bit far away from you, so.
Okay, hold on.
And while Kelly's doing that, I see that Sophia has also noted that there's a Zoom security update, and she posted a link in the chat about that. All right, Kelly, go ahead.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Good old tech. Apologies to everyone for whom I've asked this before in the last couple of weeks, but I'm curious if any of you have heard from teacher colleagues that arts are being cut. Arts enrichment is not a priority right now, but I'm welcome to come in and do arts integration, which I did in the spring with some partner schools. So has anybody else heard that? Like, no, we don't necessarily want your feelings.
We
how we can partner in other ways.
Yeah. I heard from some other NAEA board members, mostly in the elementary level, that it is likely that at least a good number of elementary art teachers are going to be asked to teach a core, I'm putting that in big air quotes for folks who can't see me, to teach a core class, so like English, math, etc. So there is a good chance that there are lots of students who will not be getting any art from an art teacher, even virtually. Yeah, it's a bummer. Were there other folks who?
Amanda Martin Hammond.
Hammond, it's hard.
Hammond. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Phonetically, what you'd expect. So I wanted to add to that conversation about art teachers. I'm actually in Kansas. I'm at the University of Kansas, Spencer Museum of Art. But I'm with an organization that also works with educators in Missouri. And at one of our more recent meetings, they made us aware of a document that the Missouri Board of Education has created, where they had been dealing with the same issue of talking about not doing art, kind of feeling like it wasn't something that could be done. And the arts education advocacy people kind of came together and created a document and really showed that that art education is more critical right now than ever. And that what schools are finding is that that is a piece of the puzzle that, I mean, it is making a huge difference. I'd be willing to, I could find that link and share that document with you because I think it's worth looking at. Then the other thing I was going to say was that from talking with teachers that I work with, and in this particular example, the elementary art teachers that I work with, that we've decided to take a different approach than even looking at it as a field trip or a tour, and it gets at the whole idea of the shorter length, and instead doing like 5 to 15-minute videos, whether some will be live but recorded, or some they'll be recorded as sort of yet to be determined. I think there'll be a mix of the two. But the way I'm looking at it is that I'm not trying to replicate the museum field trip. What I'm going to do is create resources that even when these students are able to come to the museum, there are these little short video segments that can be used in the classroom for pre-visit, for post-visit, for just supporting the curriculum and making connections to works of art in the Spencer's Museum. So just kind of looking at this as an opportunity to create new resources and keep that connection.
That's great. Yeah. And I think that's something we've heard a lot of. How can we make this work count more than once, right? Like, so whatever we create now, making sure that it is applicable when we're back in person, or if we're in hybrid, or whatever the system, and taking advantage of the possibilities now. That's one thing that I would love to hear from folks. What do you see as the advantages? But I'm going to pause that for a second, because one of the things that I did say we would talk about today, and I want to make sure we give it enough time, is pricing, because I see Kelly's also, or Sarah's also brought that up, is thinking about pricing models. We know that budgets are being cut, and we're being asked to bring in revenue wherever possible. I will keep saying we, but was recently laid off from the Minneapolis Institute of Art. I'm good. Do not worry about me. I'm enjoying my time off. But so I will say we, even though I'm not there anymore. But you know, that's a place where we could offer free field trips, but knowing how important it is to bring in revenue. So if folks have a pricing model, if you again could put in the chat to share, that would be great. Another thing that I will also mention, bouncing off of the comment about a state letter supporting the arts, NAEA as the national organization has an open letter from the executive director and the president to specifically principals, etc., about the importance of the arts there too. So please find that on the website. We're also working on one as we speak about the importance of museum education, and to directors and board members to try and prevent more cuts, or not disproportionate cuts. I see that, Brian, you've got information about pricing, I think.
Well, my dog started barking right when I hit share, so it's patience and grace. Anyway, we're used to this by now. We were in a situation where formally for over a decade, we were able to offer free field trips, including not only free admission, but transportation reimbursement, substitute teacher reimbursement. And those were longtime funders of that program. And we recently had redirected that particular funder, a local foundation, to another program, and we had new funders for this current fiscal year, and we were able to approach them and say, this is our new reality. Our museum has made a decision to have no on-site visits for the entire school year. That's not a possibility for us. So we were able to redirect that grant application of what we intended to do with that money to our entire distance learning program. And they were nice about it and had no problems with it. So we were able to reallocate those resources to equipment, to new staff. And I'd be happy to speak about that more, but that's what we were able to nimbly do in this situation.
That's great when you've got funders that are flexible like that. And I think I haven't heard any horror stories yet. So I think generally funders are being generous and flexible. And Suzanne at the Jewish Museum, you also wanted to share.
Yeah, I will say that our funders have been really generous also. Private, individual donors, and we just found out about a lot of city funding that we got, so we're really happy to hear that that's continuing. And that's great for a lot of our school partnerships are directly funded. Just in terms of pricing, we are offering virtual tours, which we are going to charge for. We need revenue, basically. And we always charge just a flat fee for our tours, and we're going to continue that. It's a little less than what we charge for on-site tours, and we're also assuming that this whole year will be virtual tours, nothing on-site. We're in New York City, and even right now they're saying it's going to be a hybrid model. Kids will be in school certain days. Who knows if that's really going to happen, but either way, if there's any part that's remote, from talking to teachers that we work with a lot, they're not doing a lot of synchronous teaching because kids are sharing devices or their parents work and they can only do their work at night. So we're going to offer live virtual tours, but that won't work for a lot of the public schools. So we already created, for one of the chains of charter schools in our area, they hired us to create a video field trip based on one of our themes. And we sort of, using a slideshow, but we sort of tried to structure it like a regular tour. So we'd say like, pause here and think about these questions. And we had the questions up on the screen, or pause here and do this activity, sketch something or write something, so that it sort of mimicked that. And that way the kids could either do it at home on their own time, or the teacher could do it, in their meeting time, maybe just do a little, or they could just do a follow-up as a group. So our plan this summer, which feels like it's almost over, is to create some of those that we can distribute to schools so that if they can't do a live tour, and those we are deciding whether we're going to charge them for those, like a nominal fee. And maybe say like, okay, you have this link for 2 weeks or something like that. And that's a way also that maybe like Title I schools, that's something we could offer for free, whereas a live virtual tour would be a lot harder to offer for free. We also have a lot of funded partnerships with schools around the city. Those will continue because those are directly funded, and those are more likely to at least have some live component. And also, what we found in the spring was that the independent schools and the Jewish schools we work with are more likely to do more live teaching. So that's how we've had some virtual tours already.
That's great. Yeah. So knowing that there's a desire for a lot of things, and that model of free pre-recorded and paid live is something that I've heard in other conversations. I also want to point out that Brian mentioned that non-school tours will have fees, and that's something we were exploring at NAEA too, was if it's an adult private tour, etc. I know also the last meeting we had Heinel Epley, who's also on the development committee, and she's at the Cleveland Museum of Art. She was discussing the pay what you wish model, and she definitely shared, they had a model where they shared with the schools that this is what it costs us to give this program to you. And they were very conservative. I think they estimated $5 a head. And it is, if you are able, please do, and if you can't, no pressure. So I think that's a really a nice model as well. Let's see. So I see that Amanda posted the Missouri Board of Education pandemic recovery considerations. Great. And then, so a tech question of expiring links. Does anybody have information on how to do expiring links? And so having pre-recorded things, they've got them, but you know, that little tech aspect. So if anybody has resources about that or wants to unmute and share a resource they know. Yeah, looking into how art education supports social emotional learning, definitely key. There's a great article, blog post on art museum teaching from TAME, TAAME, Trauma Aware Art Museum Teaching, and just had a conversation with them the other day, and it's a loose, informal group of folks who are interested in this topic, and I think they're very certain to make the distinction between, you know, actual art therapy and being trauma aware, and that there are many things that can be therapeutic without it being therapy. And so we're hoping to do some more engagement between NAEA and them, and hopefully we can share more moving forward. A great question about including captioning and transcripts with virtual and digital programming. That is really important for accessibility. Great learning tools too. If you are sharing a video, I think having captioning, having at least a transcript is bare minimum, and if you can caption as well, that'd be ideal. I know that YouTube does have automatic captioning, not always great. I do believe too that you can, I haven't tried it yet, you can live caption Zoom and that it'll stick with the recording. And I believe you can then also edit that captioning later. Let's see, I see also that we've got, and if there's anybody who wants to unmute and talk about any captioning or transcripts that they're working on, or a workflow or anything like that. Allie? Oh, you're not coming through. You're unmuted, but I can't hear you. No. Maybe unplug and plug in again. There we go. No?
Weird.
Oh, now I can. No, wait, I just heard you say weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So just on captioning, yes, you can live caption in Zoom. If you are uploading things to YouTube, it will provide the auto captions. You can go in and correct them. And it's actually pretty user friendly to do that. So whoever has access to the YouTube editing suite, you can go in and correct pronunciations and things like that. Services like R-E-V, charge, I think, like $1 a minute for transcribing things, which is pretty reasonable. Again, you may want to go in and correct things just in case, but that has been really helpful. So.
Awesome, thank you. And so it looked like Amanda was saying that they will plan to have videos available online and captioned. And let's see, Zoe mentioned that Dropbox can create links with expiration dates. So I think it might be a factor of creating different links. Maybe it's through a bit.ly, but I don't know if that would work, because I guess once you click on the bit.ly, it goes to the full thing, so you would be able to see it. But lots of things to consider. I do want to chat, unless there's other information. Oh, sorry. So Zoe's saying you would have to drop the video in Dropbox and share that way. I think that makes perfect sense. Okay. Any other ideas or comments or sharing about charging? And please feel free to either type in share into the chat or just unmute yourself. what are, okay, so we've got a question about translations or captions in other languages. So being bilingual, any ideas on that? I will say from personal experience and from an equity standpoint, it is important to have professional translations done and not rely on a staff member who happens to be bilingual. That's not ethical to make them do work that's not in their job description. And interpretation is a skill. So, you know, paying folks fairly for that time and expertise is important. So I think that's one thing to also keep in mind in translating is that often other languages, it takes longer to say the same thing. So so at MIA, we had like a welcome, kind of a pre-visit video that was in English and Hmong and Somali and Spanish. And the Somali and Spanish videos had to be a lot longer, and our AV team had to cut them differently because we needed more time to say the same things in different languages. So something to keep in mind. And oh, interesting, Sophia's noting that AI-based captioning, the more you use it, the better it gets. And Zoom is working on its own live AI-based captioning. And she listed some great suggestions for AI captioning: Rev, 3Play Media, Vitech, Otter. Sorry, somebody knocked on my door and the dog went bananas. I'm going to mute and ask people to write their questions in the chat.
I'll take over for a second. I have a question about how people are video recording these virtual tours. I don't know if we got into it in the last tour, peer-to-peer, but if you're having a docent in the gallery, are you planning to like have them have the device with them to record it? Are you pre-recording with a, you know, quote unquote professional person or professional camera? I know my museum is very short staffed right now, and we don't have, you know, a videographer on site. So what is everyone else doing for their videos to do these virtual tours? Suzanne, you can go ahead and unmute.
Hi, me again. The one that we are not recording them in the galleries. We can't even be in our building now. So we're just, we actually recorded the one we did for the charter school in Zoom and just used a PowerPoint. And we used images of the building and of the galleries just so that they would get a sense of the place, not just the artwork.
And that's something we had been talking about at MIA too, was a few years ago, we had done gallery to classroom, which was where there actually was a guide in the galleries filming them. And thinking about the number of people it would take to do that, we decided that would put more people at risk of being in contact, especially if you're recording, you probably don't want to have a mask on, and that it's safer. And probably you can get better details and images, etc., when you're using a PowerPoint on a Zoom. And also, I think we have to, I know it's difficult sometimes to get the PR folks, the brand monitors to be on board, but sometimes it has to be a little bit quick and dirty to get done, and done is better than perfect a lot of times. I know it's hard to make other people understand that. And Liesl is saying that like zooming in is really great. You can flip them around and it can be really helpful. I see that Nicole wants to share, but I also want to note that Naomi had a question about using apps like Vemond or Clio, but I'll let Nicole go first, and then if there's anybody who is using those apps, if you would share next.
And Olga also wants to share from History Miami. Hi, Olga.
I was just going to mention briefly, I'm with the Marine Science Institute in Texas, and we are doing some virtual engagements that are live. And the way that we did it, we used Zoom, but we would have, also trying to, social distance, one of our staff members in a room that was fairly quiet, no distractions. And then we would have another staff member out, on our kind of like field site, if you will, which is part of our rehabilitation center. So we did like live virtual engagements with our sea turtles and so forth. So that worked really well just because of background noise and so forth. And then trying to, one person move from a different location, that can be really distracting, especially we work with, young students. So just wanted to share that.
That's awesome. And I'm really jealous that you get to work with sea turtles. And I will, Olga, if you could go next, thanks.
Yeah, hi. So what my museum is doing, what we're thinking of doing is we might have some of our part-time educators, which are the ones who do the tours, go to the museum with allowed access. We're still closed, but they would do live tours through an iPad. We wouldn't be having our marketing team or any professional people. It would just be two of the educators at the museum by themselves in the gallery, and then just using an iPad. Like one person would be doing the tour and the other person would be behind the camera.
That's great. And I think that also brings up the important point of, even if you're not in the galleries, of probably having a couple of people on to help, as we're doing here, help monitor the chat, help do some other things. It just, especially if you're using volunteers, and I'm curious about that as well. Yep. So Mary just brought that up, is folks using staff or volunteers to lead these. At MIA, we had a volunteer guide / docent corps of 300, and we were inviting folks who were interested and felt comfortable to participate in trying out virtual tours. We were doing one-on-one tutorials with Zoom and things of that nature, and planning on having a staff person be with the volunteer until they felt a little more comfortable. Nicole mentioning that it's really important to have another staff person, and I would love, Joy, then, if you said you've got information on using volunteers for those virtual chats.
Well, hi, I'm from the Reginald Lewis Museum. I was actually just wanting to share that we are actually starting to do that. I don't have control over the network that they use. We actually use GoToWebinar and GoToMeeting. And so what we've done, at least for the few that we've had so far, is we've used volunteers to assist, just as you mentioned, about welcoming people, helping to filter the questions to the guests that come in, so that the staff can then read them off as they're doing a panel or they're answering questions and things of that nature. And so far they enjoy it. They like it that, they can be involved in that level. Since we can't physically be there, they're also working on that virtual tour where we can do the voiceovers. And the idea that the education manager and I have been talking about, I'm the volunteer coordinator, what we've been talking about is having a situation where they can toggle through and we can assist them, and we're toggling through the exhibits as they're looking at it virtually, and they're discussing it with the children and things like that. And so that's what we're doing, and that's what we're planning to do for those two things. And I'm excited. And thank you for letting me get in, because I just sent you an email that I couldn't get in, and I'm excited that I made it in.
Awesome.
I was so upset when my boss said it. She was like, I need you to go. And I was like, I can't get in. So this is a great, no, it's great that you have this type of participation. So
good.
I'm not mad about it. I was just
okay. Glad you made it in.
Me too. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. So we've had a lot of folks commenting on, definitely using a handful of people, maybe even 2 or 3. Olga at History Miami is noting that they had educators do videos at home using images from archives. And I'll just do a little sidebar, is that that's one of the things as an art museum educator that excited me, was being able to mine the entire collection, not just what's in the galleries. And so to me, that was really exciting, and be able to do like those side-by-side comparisons of artworks that are in vastly different parts of the building. I think that's a pro. And so I'm curious of other things that people have thought of that might be benefits to doing things virtually to in person. I noticed that Susie is also saying that they're hoping to use 360-degree photography of their historical site, and then using that photography to navigate through those guided interactions again, so you're not in those physical spaces again multiple times. And it seems like other folks have done that as well. I think that's one thing for me personally, is that idea of a virtual tour is a nomenclature can be really strange. And what do we call these things so that people understand what it is? It's something that we've experienced as far as like, what do people expect if they're Googling virtual tour? Do they expect to have that 3D walkthrough? I personally don't find 3D walkthroughs very satisfying. I would rather be able to get close to the image itself, and if there's text, to read the text and see the image up close. That's me personally. I don't know about the general public. One of my favorite reminders for museum education programming is we are not our audience. Us as museum professionals are not who we're programming for. So we've heard other folks using Matterport. Yeah, Matterport seems to be pretty popular and user-friendly. I'm curious, other bonuses, things that people are excited about with virtual, or other questions that you have for the group. What are things that are weighing on you that you haven't figured out yet or you want help with?
I have a question again. Maybe we talked about it a little, of size. So going virtual means you can have like hundreds of people on the call at one time, but in a museum setting, we like to keep things really small groups, so that everyone gets a chance to talk. So for those who are charging and even not charging or sliding scale, are you planning to still keep the groups really small? Or I don't know, what are people's thoughts or experiences with that?
So at the Nasher Museum, we did these just kind of interactive PowerPoint conversations with kids in the spring, actually. And we found that keeping it like 30 absolute max was best. So I think just kind of sticking with individual classrooms if they're in the classroom, or just kind of keeping it in that tighter small group, ideally 15 to 20, but we did up to 30 and it was okay.
That's great. Yeah. So thinking about size constraints, you can be a little bit more than you might in the galleries, but yeah, it's still important, because I noticed that Jamie was asking about how do you make live virtual tours interactive, have students unmute and share, contribute in the chat. Yes, and I think that's one thing that we found that is exciting about the chat, is the opportunity for not having to verbally participate. And also I want to make sure I credit her, Shannon Moulter, at the last session. She mentioned that especially with teen groups, and I think this would work for other ages too, she gets them to draw emojis to start out, and so then they can respond by holding up an emoji to their screen as a response. So they're getting to make something and then also use it as a response tool. But I think having the the breakout rooms possibility, which I don't think we'll actually get to today, sorry about that, you could do a pair share, or you have the opportunity to engage students in ways that are different modalities than you would otherwise. And I think we've also heard that if you've got 30 kids in different, like all in their own spaces, and a teacher helping to do classroom management, really coordinating with the teacher and relying on the teacher for helping with that because they know the norms, etc. And assuming that it would be different if they are in the classroom. Let's see. So many things to share. So Brian, if you want to share again.
Quickly, because Elizabeth touched on it, I believe. What we're imagining is that we need that classroom educator as a facilitator, best knowing his or her students. So when we're thinking of the group size, we had to do away with our 15 or less normal group size and think about that facilitator, that classroom educator who has the best relationship. So right now we're working with an educator with her or his average group size, which we hope is less than 30. That's where we are.
Great, yeah. Sophia, would you tell us what you shared?
Sure. So yesterday, this is actually pretty timely. We had a teacher workshop about tips and tools for teaching about art online. And it includes a number of different tools that you're talking about now, like the annotation tool in Zoom and more, and limiting the number of artworks to 1 or 2, and focusing for a specific length of time, 30 minutes being max. And so, yes, I've just shared what was shared with the teachers yesterday in the chat, and
Awesome.
You're welcome to have it.
Thanks so much. Sophia, I'm gonna, you don't have to answer right now, but I would love to be able to also share that with the YouTube recording later. So let's connect about that. Otherwise, and Suzanne at the Jewish Museum is also talking about keeping school groups small for adult tours, allowing larger group, but charging more for big ones, especially because Zoom does that. Also, we'll plug our conversation from last week that Kabir Singh led about using Zoom for professional development for educators, but there's lots of useful tips and tricks in there too if you're not super familiar with Zoom. So I'll encourage you to watch that, and I will go get that link and put that in there. The other thing to know that if you don't already know this about, this is just for your own personal edification, and if you're like me and impatient, when you watch on YouTube, if you're watching on your phone or a computer, you can increase the speed of playback. So you can play back at up to twice regular speed. So you can listen to things a lot faster and get through them quickly. I noticed that Kelly was also talking about she did an entire grade twice a week for a few months, 125 sixth graders at once, and it really did help to have multiple ways to engage students. Yeah, and Sherry commented that, you know, students sometimes know tech better than we do and enjoy using the chat box. Yep. We don't ever want to assume, though, that digital natives know it better than we do. There often are gaps or, you know, inequities in access to tech. Yeah, using the annotation and poll feature is always a good way to interact. One thing that and Kylie, go ahead.
Okay. Bringing up the adult group tours is really interesting to me, of how are you going to advertise them, because usually it's like a really proactive community member who gets her little group of friends together and comes for a virtual tour, for a tour. So how are people marketing to these same types of people to say, like, it's really easy and all you need to do, you'll get this email link and you can share it with your friends, or we'll do it? Like, how logistically are people doing that?
Olga, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, so that's actually one of my colleagues. She does the adult tours, but from what I know, what she did, she emailed all of the groups that she had already booked coming up, letting them know that we were moving to virtual. And then from there on, she's been having a few of those groups turn to virtual, and then she's gotten a few more groups through eBlast. She asked the marketing team to do an eBlast, letting our patrons know that we would be offering virtual adult group tours.
I think that's great. Yeah, I think treating them like a special program, like if you had a lecture or an event, if you have them open to the public, or if you want people to schedule special ones for their private group, I think engaging in those same promotional ways. I did put a link in the chat to recordings for the previous peer-to-peers. We'll try and get this one up ASAP. I realize that we're a little over time. And also I put my email in the chat. So please, 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 if there are questions that you still have that we didn't get to, please send them my way. We want to make these really useful to you all. And also, if you have other ideas for other topics that you want to cover, this is an opportunity for us to share. And as I hope you have seen today, there's lots of great practice happening out there, and this is really a wonderful group to connect with virtually. So thank you so much, everybody, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. And if it's nice outside, and even if it's not, go outside. So, oh, and Luigi, who you've heard before, he will make his appearance. Yes, he is a very loud, long-haired dachshund. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. See you later.